Learning Short, and we're talking today about robbery prevention and protection. And I have two special guests with me today. I have Larry Spicer. He's the Vice President of Loss Prevention and Risk Services at Jewelers Mutual Insurance Group. And I have Simon Thomas. He's the President of CJB Insurance Services. Welcome to you both today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So, this is a really timely discussion that we're having around robbery today. We're seeing an increase in crime across all spectrums of crime since last year, 2021. And in particular, the one volatile criminal activity that we're seeing an increase in is robberies. And particularly in the Greater Toronto area, we're seeing a lot of robberies that have been violent, significant jewelry loss, damage to premises as well, and traumatic occurrences for everybody. So the first thing that I'd like to ask you is about prevention. So what are the as a jeweler, what are the key things that a jeweler can do to perhaps insulate their environment, their store, to make it less, appealing to somebody that might be doing a robbery? Simon, how about you start off with this part of the conversation?
Sure. So to Kelly's point, we most certainly have seen a major increase in crime within the GTA area. We've been insuring jewelers for a long time. We have never seen it this active, and it is concerning. Jewelers need to think outside the box these days on how they're going to protect themselves. Their traditional safe camera system alarm is the absolute minimum. We need to expand on that. Laminated cases, something that we don't see as often as we would like, can have a great impact on reducing losses. Having the correct number of staff on premise is also very important. That's something that we see on a regular basis. Not enough staff in the store to help deter a would-be thief. Limiting how much we put in showcases is something else that we really on. It's not uncommon I walk into a retail shop and I'll see 10 of the same SKU numbers in a showcase. There's no reason to have 10 of the same items in the showcase. We should have one item and the rest kept in the safe. So I think we really need to think differently about how we're conducting business these days.
Yeah, fantastic. And Larry, anything that you would like to add on that?
Well, I agree with everything that Simon said. And I would just add that 100% agree that we definitely need to think outside of the box, especially as crime and the criminal element is getting more aggressive. But at the same time, we also have to get back to the basics so that we can harden that target to your question. And so, the basic things like one person should not be opening up the store. You should have at least 2 salespersons on the floor. When you have one person on the floor, typically your chances of a robbery goes up significantly. I really like the point that Simon drove home as it relates to your high-end merchandise. We want to make it challenging and not easy and appetizing for criminals to come in and ultimately make you a victim. I think also to having an alert system amongst your employees. I'll pick on Simon and say, Mr. Thomas is in the building. That may be a code that you may want to come up with for your staff to alert them that, we have some suspicious activity. We need all eyes. And then also to that customer service, greeting the individuals and letting the customers know and any suspicious activity person know that you're on high alert. A lot of times that can be a deterrent.
Yeah, this is fantastic to get both your takes on it. And, it's interesting. I was recently talking with a jeweler who was unsure whether or not they should report a suspicious person that had been in their store to police. And the thought was that perhaps the police wouldn't necessarily want the information or take it seriously or whatnot. And I 100% encourage them to to pick up the phone and make that call, because that is absolutely relevant information, and it could be related to a previous event or a future event, and critical information that the police needs. So if there's ever that type of occurrence where somebody's suspicious, casing the store, a strange vehicle pulling up and just parking outside for a while, that kind of thing, 100%. Those things need to be reported to police as well.
Share with
Kelly is
sorry, but also share with JVC and our office. There's recently been a group out there trying to commit gold scams, showing gold wire and then switching it. Because of the loss prevention bulletins that we've been sending out, we've been getting information from other clients throughout Ontario telling us where these guys are. So we've had quite a few losses prevented because jewelers are sharing information with us.
Yeah, very important.
And I Kelly, with your law enforcement background, in the past, I've not in the past, but even when I do these type of discussions, I always tell jewelers or any type of crime prevention audience that is as strange as this sounds, but it's true. There's something innately in all of us, right, that tells us something's not right. And so it happens here. And when you feel it, if you see something, you say something, and you trust that gut. And so I'd rather err on the air of caution. And so I always instruct people to, you see something, you better say something.
Yeah, 100%, Larry. And that's why I brought that idea up, and appreciate you reiterating that. And going back to my days of law enforcement, it was tips like that, suspicious persons, information around that often solved crimes or prevented them. Yeah, very much appreciate that. So, what if a robbery were to happen? We're talking about prevention and things we can do in advance of that to dissuade, robbers from looking at our premises and so on and so forth. But what if we find ourselves in a robbery? What are the steps we should take to, prevent harm and, to make it through to the and come out the other side as best we can? Larry, how about you lead off on this one?
Yeah. So this is one that's very dear to me, but I think number one is life safety. Along with what you alluded to about the criminal activity that's become more aggressive and frankly more dangerous, we're also seeing some trends where jewelers are starting to take matters into their own hands. And that's an absolute no-no. So what I want jewelers to know, if they don't think about anything else, is that when criminals come in and there's an actual robbery, I want you to assume that they're not only there to take your merchandise, they're also there to do harm. And so cooperation 100% so that they're in and out is paramount. Also too, when the actual robbery is taking place, after the criminals have left, assume that this is a crime scene. It is a crime scene. Don't touch anything. Don't wipe down anything, because anything, fingerprints, blood typings of any sort that the police can utilize to help solve this crime, that will be extremely helpful. So those are a few things that I would add, but the bottom line is it really comes down to, you can assume that they're going to do harm, and if they don't, that's great. And the reason why they didn't do harm is because you are 100% compliant. They may tie you up. Don't make eye contact. Don't push any buzzers. Don't do anything that's going to create any harm to yourself or your employees or any customers that are in the store.
Yeah, fantastic. Simon, do you have something that you might add to that?
I think Larry hit on all the key points. Comply is the key. It's aye, Captain. Whatever they want is what we're doing at that point.
I like that.
I will touch on the post loss. I went to see a jeweler yesterday that unfortunately just suffered an armed robbery over the weekend. There were 3 employees at the time of the loss, and those 3 employees happened to be in the store yesterday. And when I started talking to them, it became very clear very quickly that they are really shaken up about this.
Yeah.
And at this point, I talked about the relief program and that it is in their interest to talk to someone after this to get it out of their system. A couple of these employees said they can't sleep right now. They're, having a hard time. I think a lot of people want to put on that stiff upper lip, pretend nothing's wrong, but there are things wrong. You're not the same after a major robbery like this. And I think that it's prudent for one to take advantage of the programs that are available in order to get yourself right and ready for the next day.
Agreed.
Yeah, that's brilliant, Simon. Often I think we forget about that next step, right?
Sure.
And just as we're talking about the prevention at the front end, and then we're looking at what happens if a robbery occurs and how to make it through, and the various steps we can do, being calm and compliant, whatnot. But it's a tremendously traumatic event to go through this, because what are we talking about? The actual definition of robbery is theft with violence, right? And the violence is toward the individuals in the store. It might even be clients in the store as well. So that will leave a footprint. And dealing with that, recognizing that that harm has occurred is critical, because it can be long lasting, and it might need more than simply heading back to work to get on top of it. It might need some other types of medical support as well. It's really important to talk about that. I'll even take it a step further, because in policing there was a time when officers would go to regular events, significant car crashes or other serious events where there was obviously traumatic things occurring, not only to the people involved but to the officer in dealing with them. And historically, there was a time when it was just like you said, keep a stiff upper lip, move on, get to the next scene and deal with it, and so on and so forth. And now in policing, they have debriefing sessions and assessments as to whether the trauma is affecting the officer and whatnot. And we need to recognize that these kind of events will leave a footprint, and we need to deal with them for our own personal well-being. And that extends 100% into these events with a robbery, a jewelry store, and the jewelers and everybody that would have been affected by that. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. So if there was one lasting comment or a takeaway from this that you would leave with a jeweler, what would that be? Larry, what would you say to a jeweler in thinking about robberies and prevention protection?
I would say that the merchandise, the jewelry, I understand is your livelihood, but the greatest asset you have is yourself. And so when it comes down to a robbery situation, going back to what Simon just talked about, what you just alluded to, life safety is paramount. And that would be the biggest, because of what I'm seeing in terms of how violent these actions, and then also too, because it's such a personal thing when you're taking my livelihood, and I'm seeing jewelers taking matters into their own hands. I'm very, very concerned about that. So my message is that life safety is paramount over everything.
Awesome. And Simon?
On my end, change the way you're doing business. The status quo is no longer working. We cannot continue doing the same things we did yesterday, hoping for a different result. Alarm system, camera, safe is the absolute bare minimum. We need to think differently. We need to laminate our showcases. We need to think about GPS tracking devices. We need to think about controlled entry. We need to limit how much we put in the showcases. If we continue at the same rate, we're doing the same things over and over again, the insurance market will not be sustainable. It will collapse at some point. So the jewelry trade needs to collectively rethink how we're doing things. And at CJB Insurance, we are definitely coming up with plans on helping our jewelers on changing the way that they're operating. The status quo is no longer good enough.
Yeah, that that's a really good point too, Simon. We're talking about robbery prevention and protection, and one of our protection measures is insurance. It's keeping us going after the fact. We'll replace the loss as it relates to jewelry, and it protects our business. But as you say, with the losses mounting, and then not only the number but the value, increasing values of losses, it starts to impact the jewelry industry and the ability to even insure.
That's right.
Going forward. Really good point.
Western Group recently flooded the market space, so there are limited number of jewelers left in Canada. Rate increases we've had over the past 2 years. There's not enough rate we can charge in Canada to put us in a profitable situation. We have to change the way we're protecting our stores.
Fantastic.
I agree with Simon 100%. If I could just add too, I had the opportunity to, while I was on vacation, visit a mall. I won't say the name of the mall, but the point is that while I'm in the mall, I got a chance to visit some of the higher end watch dealers. And I was so impressed with how they controlled the entry point. From the moment I stepped there or stepped up to the actual store, there was someone there to greet me, and there was someone that asked me if I had an appointment. And if I didn't have an appointment, they looked at the occupancy because they were controlling that, because they had procedurally that there was only so many salespersons per customer, which is great. And then when it was appropriate for me to do so, they had it kind of roped off. They opened it up, they closed it. Someone met me. They asked me very intentional probing questions. And after a while, they got a chance to find out who I was. And we were able to have a further conversation about their overall procedures and their security hygiene. They're not only looking at armed security, they were looking at plain clothes. They also had a very strong engagement from a patrol standpoint with the mall security. So to Simon's point, we have to be very, very deliberate, and we have to do business differently.
Awesome. Gentlemen, fantastic discussion today. I want to thank you both for your time and providing your expertise to this learning short for our crime prevention members. And we'll look forward to chatting with you both really soon. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.